Welcome to Mindvine, a mental health podcast for everyone. Since our first episode in 2016, we have been sharing stories of recovery, engaging with experts, and tackling the stigma associated with mental illness. The Mindvine podcast is produced by Ontario Shores Centre for Mental Health Sciences and is available on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts.
Hi, and welcome to Mindvine. I'm Julie VanHartingsveldt, External Relations Specialist at Ontario Shores Centre for Mental Health Sciences. An Ipsos poll conducted on behalf of Ontario Shores earlier this year showed that 3.5 million adults in Ontario, that's 1 in 5, are experiencing a mental health issue. Given the rising figures, this is a bigger indication of a rising problem and a need in the system. I am pleased to welcome to our show today Rachel Sumner, Chief Executive Officer with TALENT, and Dawne Barbieri, Vice President, Clinical Services and Research at Ontario Shores. Welcome, Dawne. Welcome, Rachel. We're so happy to have you here today. Our plan is that we will talk about the incredible partnership between the two organizations. We will talk about a suite of micro-credentials developed to address the need in the system, among many other details that I'm sure you'll both be pleased to share with us about the great work that we're doing in this community and beyond. With that, my first question is actually towards you, Rachel. Would you mind sharing with us a little bit more about your role with TALENT and how the partnership between Ontario Shores and TALENT came to be?
Absolutely. In November of 2020, Ontario Tech University asked me to launch Ontario Tech Talent, or TALENT as we've become known, and you mentioned, Julie. We're a subsidiary of that university, and our mission really is to work with employers who are experiencing critical talent shortages, use rapid cycle training known as micro-credentials to address the skills gaps that really are at the core of those critical talent shortages. And in our early work, we were looking for great partners in the healthcare sector who really saw the potential of rapid cycle training, micro-credentials to bring in new talent and to upskill and reskill their existing workforce. And of course, Ontario Shores was top of that list.
Wow, thank you. We are very proud of that. Dawne, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us here today. Do you mind sharing with us and the audience a little bit more about your role here at Ontario Shores and from your perspective, how this partnership came to be?
Sure. So I'm the Vice President of Clinical Services and Research and Academics at Ontario Shores. Within that academic and research portfolio, I'm responsible for onboarding new learners and participating along with the Chief Nursing Executive, the welcoming and orientation of our new staff to the hospital. And so we recognized immediately that there's a need for additional education for, in particular, our nurses, because that's where our biggest gap is when you think of health human resources. You just have to pick up a paper and notice that that's what is being the headlines is that nursing shortage, et cetera. So despite despite the pandemic that impacted us, we were already heading for some challenges when it came to nursing. So knowing that we do a lot of work with Ontario Tech and lots of research, it was a natural partnership for us reaching out and working with TALENT to develop these micro-credentials, which is perfect for our new staff and existing staff, as Rachel said, upskilling them.
Excellent. I like that word, upskilling. For those of us, Rachel, my question's towards you. For those who may not know, it seems to be a new buzzword, the word micro-credential. What exactly is a micro-credential?
Great question. We spend a lot of our time answering the question, Julie. I think you're absolutely right. There's still a lack of understanding about exactly what micro-credentials are. I think there's a lack of understanding by employers. There's a lack of understanding from the workforce at large. So the kind of innovation that Ontario Shores is leading here is really the cutting edge of helping us evaluate, and Dawne's team, on the research side and evaluation side have been instrumental in that. But back to your question, micro-credentials for us are short, rapid cycle training that are focused on competency. That's where we start. What is it that we need that individual to be able to do as a result of this learning experience, and start there? So it's a verification of competency. And the thing that excites me most about that, particularly in the context of healthcare, and Dawn was speaking to the nursing shortage, is how do we build capacity most effectively, quickest? And if somebody is already on a journey to competency, traditional models of training would have them repeat topics, ideas, practice that they had already possibly demonstrated competency in. We're circumnavigating that and saying, really, we want our competency-based micro-credentials to be additive, to take the learner from where they are in terms of their existing competency and move them forward. And so one of the other critical pieces of micro-credentialing as well is, once that competency has been verified, how does that get articulated in such a way that employers particularly can look at that individual and say, now I understand exactly what you can do, so I can leverage your skills and competencies with a clear and confident understanding of them in our workplace to undertake the tasks, et cetera, that we need them to do. I think all of us, those of us that have traditional credentials, when you look at your academic transcript, what does it really tell you about anything in terms of what that person's able to do? So that's another really exciting piece of micro-credentials for us, is the communication of competency as well as that verification of competency.
Excellent. Thank you so much. One of the pillars of Ontario's roadmap to wellness calls for innovation solution and filling gaps in care. So as an employee of Ontario Shores, I know we pride ourselves on innovation. But Dawn, can you share with us how the introduction of these micro-credentials addresses that call to action or call from the provincial government?
I think it affords people an opportunity to learn in small little pieces of time in an innovative way, how to learn about new topics or a different way of learning. Sometimes when you've been in healthcare for 15 years, 10 years, 15 years, there's an assumption that you know something, but you may not, because things may have changed. Many nurses go through their training with little to no mental health experience, clinical, whether theoretical or clinical. So that's why when I talked about upskilling, it's great for not just new staff, new people into nursing, or we've been trying to expand this to other professions, but also the existing staff, where new topics might have come out after they've graduated already. I think the creative structure of our micro-credentials is that you don't just learn from your course facilitator, the skills coach, you learn from one another as well. So if Rachel is in the program with me, I might be new, she might be one of these 15-year, 20-year experienced staff. I can learn from her as well as from the skills coach. And then I might even bring in something new that is, an aha moment for Rachel. So it's the platform too, I think, right, Rachel? Yeah. That's quite unique.
Yeah, and building on that, if I may, I love that point, because one of the pieces of value that we're seeing come back from learners already is bringing nurses in, not just from Ontario Shores, but across other settings. We've got nurses together in these micro-credentials from, for example, community hospitals, home health care, long-term care facilities.
In BC, from BC.
From coast to coast, who are actually starting to build a common language around these skills and competencies. And to your point, starting to understand how the evidence-based practice may actually appear different in those different settings. So I think what we're also thinking about is the capacity we're building in the system, across the system, coast to coast to coast, across settings, across healthcare, in a way I don't think has ever been attempted before.
Definitely.
And I think just getting back to the roadmap as well, I think this provides people with an opportunity to get re-energized, much more passionate, because if you've if you've ever taken a new course, you can really get excited about almost like a new opportunity for yourselves. And so people can dip their toes in, whether it's recovery-oriented practices, mental status assessment. Every 2 minutes, it seems, someone's asking us, oh, you can make a micro-credential out of this. We've got people lined up asking, can you make a micro-credential for pediatrics, adolescents, forensics? And so it's really an endless opportunity to have these short bursts of knowledge over a 6-week period. And we're even looking to the Canadian Nurses Association to have these accredited.
Wow.
So that's important for nursing, and in particular to have these continuing education credits. So they're validated, they're accredited according to standards. So we have looked at every opportunity to make this the best that we can provide for our health human resource folks.
What a great opportunity for nurses, but more importantly, the benefit to patient care, I imagine, is revolutionary. I do have a question, something you touched upon. When we think about the need, we talk about frontline nurses or perhaps a new nurse. You say often they don't have or haven't been trained and have provided any sort of mental health training. So could there be a nurse working, for example, in an acute care emergency room or perhaps in a geriatric unit in an acute care hospital that would have no mental health training but be expected to deliver care to someone who is perhaps struggling with a mental health need?
So when I say no, let's just say limited.
Limited.
Because in order to pass your exam, they do have some questions. So there is a little bit of training, but certainly not as extensive as med-surg type of nursing. So, if you think about the prevalence of dementia, you see dementia patients everywhere, in the community, in the emergency departments, on med-surg. And so those type of education offerings provide you with additional knowledge, more in-depth knowledge, but truly allows you to demonstrate your competence. So it's not just passing a test. There's really cool competency assignments that are part of these micro-credentials. I have to do a shout out to all of the folks that have been developing these micro-credentials. They've put a lot of thought into it. The development of these courses happen with the expertise of Ontario Shores and a few external, I'm thinking about ethics and whatnot. But also there's a course designer that's a talent, a member of the talent team. So the collaboration is awesome. So you've got subject matter experts, you've got design expertise coming together to create these amazing micro-credentials.
So not to put either one of you on the spot, because I know there's a good number of them. So I can't imagine that you could rhyme them all off. But I imagine that if someone wanted to see them all, they could visit. Is there a website?
Yes. Yeah. If anybody's interested in learning more, we have the details of all of the micro-credentials currently developed at www.ontariotechtalent.ca.
Excellent. So what are a few highlights? What are some of the micro-credentials available?
I will, but also if you're an Ontario Shores staff member, you can go through our Shoreline, our intranet, or you can just track me down because I'm willing to shout these topics from the treetops. Okay, mental status assessment, recovery, therapeutic communications, foundations in mental health, ethics, medication, pharmacopsychiatry,
Trauma-informed care.
Trauma-informed care, yeah. And then we're also developing adolescents, some of the more unique type of knowledge, like forensics, adolescents, to name a few. Our goal over the next 3 years, how many?
27.
27. That is incredible.
Yeah.
And hearing all of them sound so incredibly interesting, but you're hearing so much more around trauma-informed care. So that in particular, I imagine is
that one went off like a rocket.
Yeah.
I mean, we've literally put on extra opportunities for learners to register in that one. It's clearly, sadly, a significant need in terms of building capability.
And I graduated a long time ago. We didn't even know what trauma-informed care was back then. Recovery, that's another popular one.
Yeah.
The medication, the psychiatric medication program. Again, things have changed so much over the years. So there's lots of opportunity, whether you've got limited experience in healthcare or a great number of years. We've got something for everybody.
Yeah, and if I may on that as well, I think one of the beauties of a micro-credential portfolio like this is, and you made the point earlier, Dawn, about as new evidence emerges that should inform practice, we can get it into practice quicker.
Yes.
We don't need to wait for a traditional curriculum to be updated, which truthfully can take a couple of years in a post-secondary institution in Canada right now. We can get from the point of identifying a particular competency we want to focus on to the point of having that micro-credential in front of nurses in 3 months.
Wow.
And so you think 3 months plus 6 weeks, we've got a nurse actually carrying out that evidence-based practice who has been verified as competent to do so. That's a massive acceleration from what we've seen in the traditional training and post-secondary system in Canada.
That is incredible.
And the topics have been informed. So they were selected based on some surveys that we've done. So real people in the field telling us, what is it that responding to our question, what is it that you need to learn more about to feel more competent and just skilled in what you do every day?
Wow. Who are these micro-credentials best suited for? So I open that to both of you. When you think of perhaps people who have currently registered or those, who is the current target audience?
Well, we initially started this, if you remember, when we were looking at the number of new orientees coming in. So we were targeting new staff that may not have had any experience.
All staff, nurses?
Right now, nurses.
Okay.
We have a pilot looking at our allied staff to see how much would we have to tweak the content to be applicable to everyone, because they were developed with the mindset of nursing. But we're going to do an evaluation. So it started out with new staff coming in, but then we quickly recognized all staff can benefit from this. We've had nurse managers enrolled in the program. We've had a director from another organization that's participated in some of these micro-credentials. So the sky's the limit with this, really.
And again, I think it goes back to the point we were talking about earlier, is because it is competency-based, it meets the learner wherever they are in terms of their competency. So for somebody who's considering registering for 6 weeks, that might feel like a huge commitment given work pressures right now in the healthcare system. But really, the likelihood over that 6 weeks for many experienced nurses is they may only need to spend 3 to 5 hours just focusing on those areas that they need to either learn more about or practice more around in order to be then verified successfully as competent. For maybe our newer nurses, they may need to take more time over that 6 week period. But again, it's breaking that old model of, being in the classroom a couple of nights a week or giving up your weekend to go and study somewhere. This is designed intentionally to be able to wrap around the realities of nurses' working lives and frankly, their lives outside of work today.
And the skills coach is asynchronous, meaning, the skills coaches check in whenever they've got time, whenever it works for them. So they'll leave feedback, looking at, let's just say I'm doing a mental status assessment and I have to respond in a written document. The skills coach will go in and evaluate it and leave comments for everyone to see, really. So it fits the lifestyle of today's learners. Because of this, you don't need to be in a classroom, as you say, at a specific time. If you've got children and you need to put them to bed, you don't have to miss your class because of that. You work around it.
Well, and those were actually the questions that I had. So I'm hearing the 6 weeks. So these micro-credentials are meant to be 6 weeks. They're delivered virtually.
Yes.
Excellent. And available across the country.
Yes, coast to coast to coast.
Coast to coast. That is pretty incredible. My question to you is, why this micro-credential or the online format, or asynchronous, as you mentioned, Dawn, over traditional learning platforms?
Shall I start?
You start.
Please
You start.
jump in. The world has changed. Learners' expectations have changed. how we learn has changed massively from, when I started my educational journey. We're seeing now that, and we mentioned it, the greater need for flexibility, that work and life and learning can blend more effectively together in order for people to be able to access and that ongoing learning that we all need. All of our skills are evolving as new evidence practice emerges, as the world of digital transformation progresses, we're all having to build new skills. And so the realities of having to go back to school in the traditional model present so many barriers for so many people, particularly some of those groups that we see may not have engaged effectively with education. Speaking, aside from nurses right now, I'm thinking about underrepresented groups, marginalized groups who find access to education a challenge anyway, for a variety of reasons. Micro-credentials can be a very safe, low risk way for those individuals to explore careers. One of the things we're excited about with our investments in healthcare is, can we create new pathways into meaningful employment in healthcare that differ from the existing pathways, particularly for those underrepresented and marginalized groups? But to go back more specifically to your question, Julie, about the differences, Dawn mentioned this model of social learning that we're really investing in heavily with the micro-credentials. We've a great partnership with an educational tool called Yellow Dig, which is a social learning space online that really leverages what I would describe as the best ways in which we, have come to understand social connection happens online. And really it's a place for, as Dawn mentioned, the learners to come together and share and connect as human beings online to share their lived experiences of practice, the good, the bad, and the ugly. It's a very safe space. There's a support from the skills coach around the activity in that space, but we're finding, humans are social animals. We want to learn together. We don't want to learn in isolation. We can learn faster. We can learn better if we come together to do that. And I think that's one of the parts of our design I'm most excited about, to see how that begins to grow. But the final thing I'll say, Julie, before I give the mic to Dawn, is one of the things that concerns us about traditional models is we've become very focused on compliance over competency. Dawn mentioned the kind of model where, you watch something and then respond, to a checkbox kind of poll or questionnaire at the end. And that to date has been considered sufficient. You can't call that learning. That's rote memorization. We've got to get beyond that if we're really going to impact capacity and capability in the workforce. And so the kind of competency approach we're taking together as partners is really trying, again, through your point about innovation earlier, to disrupt the paradigm that's really become core to traditional learning, which is how employers are saying, well, I put them through the 2-hour webinar and they all passed the multiple choice question afterwards. My job is done. That's not good enough. And I couldn't be proud of Ontario Shores saying that's not good enough. If we're really going to impact patient care, we've really got to get to competency. And that's, I think one of the things that sets this massively apart from the traditional.
I also think, if you think about how you watch television now, it's so different. I'm still okay with watching one episode and then waiting till next week for the next one. That's not my spouse's style. He likes to sort of do it all in one, like watch 10 episodes in one. This program offers you the opportunity to do it all in one, to sit down and do that the entire week's work, or you can do it in bits and pieces. We just encourage people not to get, behind, from one week to the next. But you can go on holidays and do this. You can be anywhere in the world and access, as long as you've got internet connection, and it works. So the why of this, there's so many reasons. Most of what Rachel's already touched on, but doing something the same old way, it doesn't cut it with today's generation, and really addressing the variety of learning methodologies and learning styles.
Something that you said, Rachel, that really stood out to me is it meets the learner where they are. And I think that can be applied in so many ways. And I think that is really what sets this apart. One of the questions, I hear lots of words about skills coach, and which aligns. My next question is, who facilitates the learning?
So we've got some people from within Ontario Shores that were brave enough to step up right at the beginning of this, that when this all started last fall, and sort of set the tone for what their role is and how it should be developed. And from course to course, we have evolved, they've learned, and we have some external skills coaches now as well. So because we've got some multiple courses running at the same time, we've had to expand our pool of skills coach. So it's a great opportunity. If anyone's interested in being a skills coach, reach out, let us know.
So you are looking for skills coaches.
Yes.
So how, if someone was interested in being a skills coach, who do they connect with?
Connect, I would suggest, with Ontario Tech Talent First. It's our privilege to be leading the recruitment of those skills coaches. We've built a training program for them. As Dawn said, we've learned a lot about how best to support and onboard those skills coaches. It'd be somewhat ironic if we didn't support their skills development. But it is a very different role, and we found, even with existing skills coaches who may have served as instructors, facilitators in the traditional model, we've really had to almost deprogram them, because the traditional model requires, a specific set of skills for them, which are quite different from facilitating. I love your use of that word, Julie, facilitating a social model of learning. You think about the now still sadly prevalent sage on the stage model, where I stand here as the expert and tell you what you need to know. That's the antithesis of what we're trying to create in these micro-credentials. So we need skills coaches who are there really to position themselves, yes, as subject matter experts, but really as a peer to the learners that they're working with, and really just encourage. Really, the truest form of coaching is to bring out the best of the ideas from the learners themselves.
I like that term, skills coach. When you're thinking of a skills coach, so if someone's sitting out there listening at home or in their car, wherever they listen to their podcasts, thinking, I don't think I have the skill set to be a skills coach. You mentioned lived experience of practice. Is that what are you looking for specifically in a skills coach?
Well, knowledge of the subject matter, because that gives you the confidence to be able to share it, and real life examples with the learners that are enrolled in the micro-credential. I think just some basic, just good facilitator skills, good communication skills, approachability, even though it's on a different type of platform. You can't, not going to encourage learning if you seem like you're mean and not interested and not responsive. And you have been hiring some of these skills coaches. So in addition to that, what do you look for?
Yeah, I think, an interest in new technology
Yes, that's
is
true.
important too. We certainly, as healthcare moves through its own digital transformation, we're looking for individuals who are excited about that, really, because as we pilot new educational technologies in our micro-credentials, we're talking about some of our future micro-credentials maybe looking at virtual reality, augmented reality to assess competency. So we're going to need skills coaches who are really excited about maybe learning that themselves.
Innovation and creativity.
Truly.
Yeah.
So we want people who are innately themselves learners, because that rubs off on others, I think.
It really does.
I think, to your point, Dawn, about that lived experience, the real value that our skills coaches bring, in addition to the points we made just now, is about they're just that chapter ahead, that mile further down the road. And when you think about what we're trying to achieve here about getting learners to competency more efficiently, faster, sharing some of the mistakes, the battle scars that they wear, the stories that they tell, is what sets a learning experience apart, I think, from just giving somebody a textbook and saying
Credibility.
It does. It's kind of, well, I tried that and this is what happened. Oh, you've tried that. Tell us about what happened there. It's that, anybody can just go and get content online nowadays. We could have just produced yet another kind of 2-dimensional set of materials that everybody reads, but the skills coaches bring that to life. And then they encourage the learners to come together and bring it to life even further. And I think people who are great storytellers actually have turned out to be really good skills coaches. And I'm super proud of some of our skills coaches who have actually also served as subject matter experts for our micro-credentials, where they've really stretched their own creativity, as Dawn was saying, in these roles. So if any of that sounds of interest to anybody listening to this podcast today, we'd love to hear from them. And we're certainly not saying that, we're going to be covering all the areas of need immediately, but we're maintaining a kind of wait list, call it that, of skills coaches. So if you're interested, let us know.
Thank you for that. So many pieces to this true collaboration. So I'm hearing there's learners, there's skill coaches, there's subject matter experts. Something we touched upon briefly is content creators. So who are these content creators? And is that something, when you're thinking of needs within the sector, is it ideas for content for these micro-credentials? How does that work? How does the role of content creator work?
Yeah, I mean, it really, I think, is situated in that collaboration Dawn was speaking about earlier between the subject matter experts and the learning scientists and designers at Talent. Any content that is developed to go in the micro-credentials is really identified by the collaboration between those individuals in that group for each of the micro-credentials. And I should also call out our professional practice.
Yes, they've
team.
been essential.
Do you want to speak to that?
Sure.
Because they're part of that content group too.
Yeah, so these are our staff in professional practice have expertise in not just subject matter, the topics of whatever it might be, but they are also, they help with education. They understand how topics build on the top of the other. So there's fundamental building blocks of learning, and they understand those, but they also can see, for example, you may be familiar with adult mental health, but you may not have any experience with adolescent unit or our eating disorders unit. So you have a fundamental mental health, then you've got adolescent, needing to understand the adolescent group, and then you've got the specialties within that. So they bring a variety of skills to the table, to the party, if you will. So there's a professional practice member assigned to each micro-credential that works in concert with the subject matter experts and the course design, the micro-credential design from Talent as well. Sometimes they're the same people. Sometimes there's our professional practice individual is the subject matter expert, but they put their hands up. Like, no one's dragging them to this party. They're coming willingly with knowledge in hand and excitement and enthusiasm. They've also been working with our various teams to identify what some of those topics might be. Because we didn't just pull the topics out of our hat. We did some, as I said earlier, we did some surveys across Canada to see what is it that, number one, of leaders, where do you think your staff need? What are some of the topics your staff need? And to the staff, what is it that you need? Because sometimes need and want are different.
Excellent. I love, there's been so many really incredible words coming out of this discussion. Collaboration. It's a true collaboration
It is.
of many, many respected experts who really want to advance the way in which mental health care is delivered, which is really incredible. As we come to an end, is there anything else that you would like to share or that's important to us? Or actually, if someone is listening and saying, I would like to register for a mental health micro-credential, what is the most efficient way to do that? And if they're thinking of cost, what is a ballpark cost for this type of micro-credential?
Would you like to talk about the Ontario Shores way?
Sure.
Yeah.
So Ontario Shores, you go on Shoreline, our intranet, and Ontario Shores is covering the cost of the tuition. And there is a stipend if you successfully complete 3 courses within 3 years. So it's very easy if you're an Ontario Shores staff member, or we've got a couple of partners that are aware of who they are. We will cover their registration costs as well, just as a regional partner.
what a real benefit to Ontario Shore staff, but again, Ontario Shore's patients to know that that upskilling and reskilling is something that we as an organization put such a high priority on.
And Julie, it's to not just attract new staff, but it's to retain and recognize our existing staff.
And you talked about energizing, right? So as nursing professionals, I think there is a commitment to continued learning, and this really does provide that opportunity. Again, I'm going to go back to perhaps my most favorite part of this session, Rachel, which is where you said meets the learner where they are. So I love that. Is there anything, Rachel, in closing that you think is really important for our listeners to know?
Thank you. Well, I suppose maybe where we're going next with this, Dawn spoke to, with this pilot we're doing at the moment with Allied Health to see whether we can take the core of the existing micro-credentials and determine exactly as Dawn said, how much they might need to iterate to serve other audiences in allied health. But after that, also thinking about new micro-credentials that we might build for healthcare. Some interesting conversations, for example, around the workforce transitioning as scopes of practice evolve. As we see even in Ontario, for example, long-term care homes may be having to take on residents that have more complex needs than they've ever had to before. What does that mean for the nurses working in those settings? Are they going to see more patients with early onset dementia, and what training is going to be needed there? So how can we take our micro-credentials and serve different audiences that have different needs as healthcare evolves? So that's super, super exciting to us. And so to your question as well, Julie, about if anybody wants to register and enroll, clearly this is not just an initiative to build workforce capacity and capability at Ontario Shores. And again, I think my absolute applause to Ontario Shores for seeing the system need here. But this is intended to support nurses, and then, as we hope, allied health build these critical competencies across healthcare, across Canada. So if I can say it again shamelessly, OntarioTechTalent.ca to find out more. All the pricing information is available there. But equally, if there are chief nurse executives, VPs like Dawn, listening to this podcast today as well, and you'd like to explore this as a more of a strategy rather than a single nurse for your entire nursing complement, we have partnership opportunities as well that can see you actually benefiting from these micro-credentials at a discount to your institution. So please do reach out. We'd love to explore that with you. We together are interested in changing the way in which mental health care, improving the way mental health care is delivered in Canada. So how we can work together to do that, is of paramount importance.
And you don't have to work in a mental health tertiary hospital to achieve the benefits. Acute care, long-term care, you mentioned it at the beginning, community. There's something for everyone in these micro.
RN, RPN.
Yeah.
Yep.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And beyond, hopefully.
And beyond, hopefully. I hope so too.
Yeah.
Well, as we come to a close, I want to thank you both for spending some time with us today. And thank you for leading such innovation and change. Undoubtedly, the patients in our community and well beyond, like you mentioned, coast to coast, who require mental health care will benefit from this. And again, appreciate you spending some time with us today. Thank you for all you have done and all you will do, and all of the tremendous steps that you're taking and the partnerships and collaboration. So with that, thank you.
We can have a follow-up in a year and we'll tell you.
Yeah, that would be fantastic.
And how many micro-credentials is it? 27. Thank you for tuning in to Mindvine. If you want to learn more about Ontario Shores or talent, you can find us online and on social media. Thanks for listening.
Make sure to like and subscribe and turn on post notifications. Thank you for watching Mindvine Podcast.